Joining us now, ESPN and SEC Network analyst to continue the college football conversation, which we have talked a lot about today. He also is a Sirius XM host, none other than Chris Doering. Follow him on Twitter at Chris Doering. And Chris, we were kind of getting into some of the Harbaugh news and some of the other things happening with Alabama today. I think the Alabama stuff, especially with the quarterback situation and that division, which I think LSU might be a bit of a, I don't want to call them sneaky because we know they're very talented, but maybe they're a little bit closer to Alabama than the odds are indicating. Right now, Alabama is the favorite to win the SEC West, -105, LSU 2-1. What's your take on the Alabama-LSU debate? Which team do you think has the inside track to be playing in the SEC championship game?
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm all about LSU, and I don't really understand the Alabama love. I certainly, think Nick Saban's the greatest to ever do it. I understand the history of success they've had, but when you look at the rosters, when you look at the quarterback position, Jaden Daniels returning for LSU, I think he's the best quarterback in the conference. You look at Malik Neighbors, I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the conference. You look at the defense, you get Mason Smith back. It's like a free agent transfer getting him after losing him in the first game last year. Harold Perkins Jr. I mean, they got so many players that I feel really good about. Brian Kelly did an absolute bang-up job in year number 1 in Baton Rouge. So I think they're the favorite. And then I look at Alabama, quarterback issues. Don't know who's taken over. That's offensive line has been a problem the last couple of years, and the receiver position has really been a bit of a disappointment. I don't understand the lack of development. They certainly recruit the best players at those two positions, but they haven't had luck the last couple of years in developing them the way that we've come to expect in Tuscaloosa.
Chris, I want to go to your former school, the Florida Gators. They bring in Graham Mertz, the transfer from Wisconsin. I'm not necessarily enamored with him, but what does this team need to do to really get back on track to where Florida was at one point in time? And in your opinion, is Billy Napier the guy to get them to that level?
Yeah, I think he is absolutely the guy to get them to that level. I've been really impressed with the plan that he's had in place for taking over this job. I think it's a job that nobody had an idea of just how extensive it actually was. This roster has been completely devoid of SEC elite talent. So trying to hit the recruiting trail, trying to hit the transfer portal has been job number 1. Florida has one of the top recruiting classes set for the 2024 class right now. And the problem is that those guys are not on campus, and when they do get on campus, they're going to be some projects in terms of development. I think the defense is going to be a lot better this year. Austin Armstrong takes over a much more talented defensive side of the ball than what Patrick Toney had to deal with last year. I think the offensive line and the running back group is going to be the strengths of this team. And then Graham Mertz, if he can just be a manager of the game, if he can limit the turnovers, if he can make the throws when he has the opportunities, I think this team can be a little bit better than what people expect. But let's be honest, guys, the Vegas over-under win total is only 5.5. That is certainly not Florida Gator-esque.
It certainly is not. My mom, who is a Gator alum, would not be happy with that win total, and she knows nothing about the team, but I'm sure she would bet over blindly. We're joined here by Chris Doering, ESPN and ABC analyst. You can also find him over at SiriusXM. Follow him on Twitter at Chris Doering. So we've done half of a segment about the SEC. We haven't mentioned the defending national champs, the Georgia Bulldogs. It is a very interesting year for Georgia, not on the defensive side. I think they're going to be just as good on that side of the ball. Kirby Smart does such great work, but it's the offensive side of the ball that I'm very interested in. Leaving is Todd Monken, who I thought really was the architect. You get Mike Bobo now in at OC, and Carson Beck, the starting quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs. So, Chris, what are we going to be thinking about, talking about, looking at when we talk about this Georgia offense heading into this season?
Yeah, I feel like a little bit of a hypocrite, guys, because the things I held against Alabama, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, are things that are going on in Athens as well, and I just don't hold them against the Bulldogs quite as much as I do the Tide, simply because I think the talent surrounding Carson Beck, we're assuming Carson Beck's going to win that job, but whoever wins that job is going to be surrounded by an offensive line that's the best in the conference and one of the best in the country. It's going to be surrounded by receivers that are elite, not only at the wide receiver spot, but the tight end spot, the best in the country when you talk about Brock Bowers and company there. The running back group is going to be strong again, and you mentioned the defense. We saw them 2 years ago lose 5 guys to the NFL draft in the first round, and they barely missed the beat last year. They'll lose a couple guys from last year's team, but I think the secondary will be better this year after a lot of young guys got some much-needed experience. And we know what Kirby Smart does in terms of recruiting and developing front seven guys. Those guys will be nasty up front. So I have no doubt, given what they return, given the schedule, that they're going to finish the season 12-0 and win another SEC championship game.
Chris, let's go back to the SEC West for a minute. College Station, a lot of pressure on Jimbo Fisher. You've got potentially Connor Wegman or Max Johnson at the starting quarterback as an all-SEC wide receiver in your career. You played with the greatest SEC quarterback of all time. I don't want to hear any Tim Tebow crap. Let's just shut it down right now before we go there. Danny Werfel's the best quarterback I saw. He won 4 SEC titles. Let me tell you, you have no idea how much money I spent on pay-per-view at Ohio State watching your team play. It is unbelievable. That Fun Gun team was unbelievable. By the way, the best game I ever saw was that when you guys put up 41 in the second half against the Big Orange, or I should call them the Little Orange in that game. But tell me where A&M comes out here this year. Do you believe in Wegman or Max Johnson?
Bro, you're getting me hype over here, man. I love
it's getting me hyped. I don't even go to Florida.
They put up 41. They scored 62.
I was just talking to Coach Spurrier about that game yesterday. We recorded a little podcast that I'm doing, and we were down, I think, like 31-14 right before half. Ike Hilliard catches the touchdown to make it single digits, and then we go on a run where we scored like 6 more consecutive touchdowns. So it was an offensive shootout for sure for us. But back to your question about Texas A&M. I'm actually kind of high on Connor Wegman. I think Connor Wegman had a chance to get his feet wet last year. We know about pedigree coming out of high school. I'm interested to see at the SEC Media Days last week, Jimbo Fisher would not admit that he was handing play calling duties over to Bobby Petrino. I'm interested to see how Bobby Petrino develops Connor Wegman and Max Johnson for that matter. I'm interested to see just how involved Jimbo Fisher is. I talked to some defensive coordinators in the league from last year and just said, Jimbo Fisher's play calling and offense in general was so antiquated. They need an infusion of life and some juice. So hopefully Bobby Petrino can do that. But this is a team I actually think, we talked earlier about LSU. I don't think LSU is a dark horse in the West at all because of all we talked about before. I think A&M actually could be a bit of a dark horse, which is saying a lot because the last 2 years they've been way overhyped.
Anytime we get an Ike Hilliard reference on the show, I feel like it's a winning day for us here.
That's right.
At VSiN. I don't think we can even go from there.
Hold on one second. I forget A&M. Who cares about them? They're going to be 8-4 at best. Let's forget that. Listen, let's go back to this 95 team. This was unbelievable. Let me tell you right now. These guys, I'm telling you, I was throwing remotes that day because I had taken the Gators in that game. That offense was so good. I still call him Super Danny Werfel because he's the best college quarterback I've seen. But you look at yourself, Hilliard, and Reed Anthony, Terry Jackson. People forget how great this team was.
It's impressive name drops.
Yeah, I can tell you, our receiving core was better than most that I was on in the NFL. You mentioned Ike Hilliard, Reed Anthony. It was me. It was Jaquez Green. It was Travis McGrath. I mean, our 5 wide was. Yeah, I mean, we were better than any 5 that you could roll out there defensively. And always had a mismatch, and certainly Danny knew how to take advantage of it. It was so much fun being a part of that run up in terms of success. I got 4 SEC championship rings in my 5 years there. I did miss out on the national championship, which obviously we got blown out by Nebraska in that 96 Fiesta Bowl. But the guys came back the next year, won the schools first, and I feel like I had a small part in that, at least the foundation of it.
Based on your last answer, I think I know what you're going to say here, but I'll ask it anyways. So there were 3 teams last year in the SEC that didn't get to a bowl game. They failed to win 6 games, Vanderbilt, Auburn, and A&M. Of those 3, A&M, the highest riser this year that you think have a chance to maybe make some noise?
Yeah, there's a lot of returning experience on both sides of the ball. I mean, last year you go back and look at that front 7. They had 17 and 18-year-old guys getting starts in their front 7. So those guys will be better this year. I think you look at the offensive line, I think those guys will be better. Anaya Smith comes back from that injury that he suffered in September last season. That'll be a big addition. So I'm a little higher on Texas A&M than the other 2. But I think Auburn actually could be a little bit of a surprise this season. With Hugh Freeze taking over, there's a little bit of juice there in Auburn right now, and I think they could get to maybe 6-7 wins possibly.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.